Eastwood. I'm Kathy Eastwood. I'm an Associate Director for the Center for Health Informatics, and my portfolio is about research and strategic partnerships. And in CHI, we aim to transform health data into evidence for the community by collaborating and developing innovative health informatics sciences for precision medicine and precision public health. This speaker series, hosted by the Center for Health Informatics, aims to introduce the extraordinary work of colleagues in the fields of health informatics from near and far. This platform is designed to enhance knowledge, form collaborations, and offer opportunities to potentially co-supervise students. Dr. Meena Amingafari is an associate professor of machine learning at the University of Calgary, and she's in the departments of science and math and statistics, and a professional statistician for the Statistical Society of Canada. Before this, she served as an associate professor in Ahmedabad University of Technology in Iran between 2013 and 2023, and as an assistant professor there between 2006 and 2013. She's also held senior data science roles in Canada's education and insurance sectors, and her research includes various projects applying machine learning to healthcare. Notably, she is a co-investigator on the project related to decoding healthy from pathogenic anti-nuclear antibody patterns using artificial intelligence, which has been funded by the McCaig Institute for Bone and Joint Health. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Meena Amingafari.
Thank you, Kathy, for your introduction. Thank you to inviting me here today to talk about my research and my project. As you can see, the title of my project is Application of Machine Learning in Healthcare. And I will talk about different projects just to give you an idea where we can apply machine learning if you didn't do until now. And I'm giving this lecture and presentation in hope we can collaborate in one of these subjects or any other subject you are working on, and you maybe think machine learning and AI can be useful. So I don't want to go in depth, but I will introduce a series of applications. So here, as you can see, this is the application of AI and machine learning in SLE for autoimmune disease in rheumatology. As we can see in 10 recent years, we have exponential growth in using machine learning. And even the name of AI introduced long time ago in 1955, but we haven't enough data, maybe, or we haven't enough resource to use this subject in our application in our research. So machine learning gives us possibility to have a complex and more developed model, and we need for machine learning we need a lot of data. So nowadays we have a lot of data, and we can use this data. And as I told, we have resource to use this data to create value in using our knowledge to create actionable decision. And now we have the data from image and biomarker, a lot of data. So we can use machine learning for this type of data. So what is machine learning? Because sometimes people mix it with AI. So there is a difference. Machine learning is a subfield of AI. And we use machine learning to create the system who can learn automatically from data instead of having explicitly programming or what we want. And machine learning can identify pattern from historical data, and we can use it for prediction and decision about new data and unseen data. And think of machine learning as a new doctor who use the knowledge experience from past patient to apply for future patient. In this image, you can see the difference between different topic we use. I know Kathy told me you are very knowledgeable and you know a lot of things, but just to have in mind what is the difference. So deep learning is a smallest and more complicated one, and then neural network and machine learning, and AI is more wider range of application. So just a little bit about type of machine learning model. As you know, we have supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforced learning. What is the difference between them? So supervised learning, when we have the label and outcome of our data. For example, we know the patient are healthy or not healthy. There is disease or no disease. We have the label, so we have supervisor to guide us. And example of supervised machine learning can be classification. For example, we want to detect is there any heart attack or not. Or in the regression, when our outcome are continuous, for example, predicting the length of a stay of a patient in the hospital. And the second category, as I told, are supervised learning. So the goal is discover the hidden structure of unlabeled data. So we don't have label, and we want to group our data in several cluster, for example, and we don't have label, and we do this based on similarity or dissimilarity of our data. For example, grouping patient by symptom or molecular profile can be considered as an unsupervised learning problem. There is a third category, reinforced learning. I don't want to talk about this subject today, but just to be cover all the three category, I will mention it. Learn via reward and penalty from actions in an environment. Imagine a kid when the kid do good job, he or she receive a gift from parents or a reward. So now he knows this action is a good. So the same for penalty. So they learn itself from the environment based on action they do. So I want to give some example of machine learning in healthcare. We can imagine predictive analytic, risk scoring, forecasting, for example, hospital readmission or disease risk can be considered as an application of machine learning. Diagnostic, for example, image analysis, the image you have from MRI, X-ray, or other type, we can use machine learning to detect the event we want. And for example, ECG interpretation or operational efficiency. For example, for research allocation, we can use machine learning for example, to predict the flow of a patient or to optimize our staffing or supply management to know in advance which supply we will need and how many and when. And in the precision medicine, for example, for tailored treatment, matching treatment to a patient, a specific characteristic, for example, for their genetic type or lifestyle. So there is some point we need to take in consideration when we use machine learning model. The first thing is data quality and quantity, mostly data quality, because as maybe you heard, garbage in, garbage out. So if our data are not the good quality, we cannot obtain the good model. So it is very, very important our data be reliable and not a lot of missing data enough. So if we have some bad data, the result can be skewed. So the quality of data is the most important. Bias and fairness is something we need to think about that. So if we train our data on the underrepresentative groups, so we can have bad model which are not equal for all categories. So we need to check demographic balance also. The other consideration I recommend to do is interpretability of model. So some of machine learning methods like deep learning are black box. So sometimes trusting the result from some machine learning model sometimes it's difficult because we don't know why we obtain these results. So it is good to try at least have interpretable model. And the other consideration is privacy and security. So patient data, as you know better than me, is sensitive data, and we need to follow the regulation and safeguard confidentiality. And the last thing I want to mention is keeping human in loop. So if I develop a machine learning and I don't know if these results make sense or not, so that would be a disaster. So we need to keep human in the loop to confirm us what we obtain is makes sense, right? So, and for the future of ML in healthcare or medicine, what I see, as you saw in the first graph I showed you, there is a real in 10 years, there is exponential growth of application. So we can imagine different type of application for machine learning in healthcare and medicine. So the first thing I think using machine learning can help us to detect earlier the diagnosis we want to do, and use machine learning for precision medicine, for use tailored therapy for the individual based on their genetic profile, improve workflow, and telemedicine, for example, and home monitoring. We can use a wearable device and do monitoring from home and help our patient. And for example, in drug discovery, we can use machine learning to be faster and more reliable result. So before starting my research and my project, I want to mention common mistake in healthcare, or in general, maybe that was better if I told in general, is first, we don't ignore the context. So we need to know these data are collected in which context, and we need to consult the expert in the domain. So if we don't do that, we can obtain irrelevant results and non-actionable output. And the other mistake sometimes we have is overfitting and poor generalization. So if our model is very good, but only on the training data, this model can fail on the new patient or different hospital. We cannot generalize it. So we need to be aware of overfitting and poor generalization of our model. And underrepresentative data, if we train only on one region or one certain population, the result can be inaccurate for prediction for other regional population. I want to give an example here. There was face detection, maybe you heard about that. Face detection developed, I think, by Amazon. And one of researcher, a woman of color from MIT, she tried this algorithm and doesn't work for her because she was a woman and woman of color. So we need to train our model on different region and population to not have inaccurate result. So sometimes a misinterpretation of result can be a problem. So we need to validate our model with real data and external validation. This is very important to be sure we don't, for example, overfit or we don't have problem with underrepresentative data. So we need to be aware of this and to avoid mistrust and maybe potential harm. Another important thing or mistake is in machine learning. If you train a model and you are happy with that and you use it for a long time, that will be a problem because maybe there is a change in the population. So we need to monitor our model and if we need to adapt our model. So the last mistake is sometimes we do non-realistic assumption, and these assumptions maybe are not correct. They are not correct in our problem. Like most of us, we suppose normality, linearity. So this assumption maybe they are not correct in our problem. So a small word about deep learning. This is, as you saw in the second figure, this is a subfield of machine learning and use deep neural network, which are inspired by human brain. The key characteristic of deep learning is it does automated feature extraction. So we don't need to precise which feature you take, and we can feed raw data image, for example, directly to our algorithms. It has high accuracy normally if we have enough data, but as I told, it is something like black box and it is less transparent. We can use it for computer vision, natural language processing, and we can use it for medical image analysis, for segmentation, for genomic and drug discovery, to recognize a complex pattern. The problem with deep learning is we need a lot of data and label data mostly. And we need a computational power, also the supercomputer, we need to use that. And the lack of explainability and interpretability is one of the challenge with deep learning. And it seems there is a growing impact on precision diagnostic and remote patient care. But we will see one application of deep learning in the project I will present you. So with this introduction, I want to start my research. So I will talk about lasso regression classification and clustering, which is unsupervised learning, and a project on deep learning, and if I have time, about hypothesis testing and the future project I'm having in my mind. So the first project I want to introduce you is about regression. As you know, we have regression is a type of supervised machine learning. So we have a target variable. We want to predict it, and it is continuous, like height, weight, and we have some information. We call it X. This information, we think they have influence on our target variable Y, and can be patient age, weight, blood pressure, or other measure we normally have in medicine. We have P of these features. We think these P features are important to predict the value of our Y. B is our regression coefficient, and we want to estimate that. And E, as you see in this equation, is our error, and this is the amount we cannot control it. So normally, this P, the number of features must be small, but because for regression, we need to solve a problem, and correlation between these X cause problem. And as you know, we don't use collinear variables, so we need to select between these variable before starting doing regression. But if we use penalized regression, we don't need reduce them before doing regression. So what we do, normally we minimize mean square error in regression. If you add a penalty with a coefficient, this penalty can solve the problem of collinearity we normally have in regression. And this lambda must be selected based on some criteria, and we propose information criteria to select this lambda. I don't want to go in a lot in mathematical detail. So this new approach, we have to select lambda, and the penalty we use is lasso penalty. This penalty is defined by sum of absolute value of our coefficient. So there is another problem in lasso regression is we don't have feature ordinarying, so we don't know which one is more important. So we propose a MSE search path to order the features selected by lasso regression. If you have question, you can ask. I don't know how it works. So in penalized regression, and especially in lasso, we obtain simpler model by shrinking the coefficient of less informative feature to 0. So we enter our feature in the model, but by using lasso, automatically these features which are less informative will be shrink to 0. And this avoid overfitting. We talked about overfitting. So using lasso in your regression can improve your result. So I don't know what time is it. So I have to go faster because I have a lot of slides to talk. So to see the performance of our model, we can use some metric like MLPD, mean log predictive density, and we can compare this value for our model with the full model. So if delta MLPD is larger than 0, it means selected model perform better than full model, and etc. So let's give an example of application we have. So we have 3 data set: breast cancer and prostate cancer and Parkinson. They have this number of variable as in our X, and these are our observation. So in breast cancer data, the objective is to predict cancer mortality in the cancer mortality using demographic and health indicator. So the target is the death rate, and we have some feature demographic information, socioeconomic, health coverage, health outcome, lifestyle, and other information. And for prostate cancer, the objective was to predict the level of prostate specific antigen for a new patient from the model we trained on the previous data. For this data, we have 96 men who were about to receive a radical prostatectomy. And we have information like cancer volume, age, and other information. For Parkinson, the objective was to predict overall Parkinson disease severity score. And we have some feature like voice analysis metric, nonlinear dynamic, and the age and sex of patients. And here is our result. As you can see, we have several methods. This one is our proposed method, and we have the number of selected features. So we entered all the data in the model, and we have only 7 feature, not non-zero in first data, and etc. So I'm not going to explain in detail, but mostly our method gives the best result. So we worked on the classification of breast cancer data also. So we want to know distinguish between malignant tumor and benign tumor. So we have some feature, and we apply different supervised learning classification method. So here is one of the results, and you can see in the table. So it seems the result, we have a high accuracy on the test data. And to be sure, this result is a really good result, and we can generalize it for other data set. We need a new data for external validation. But the linear model works very well, and the point with linear model we have here, linear classification method, is they are interpretable, highly interpretable, and it's not like deep learning, which are black box. So I worked on other projects on some data which can consider as a curve. So in this project, we cluster the curves instead of clustering the point, and we consider these data as a functional data. So why we consider this type of models or algorithms? Because we think if the nature of data are continuous, they are curved, but we observe it in the different time points. If we don't consider this aspect, the nature of this data, we lose some information. So functional data, we have to cluster. As I told, clustering is one of unsupervised learning method. We cluster the curves, and these data are high dimensional, and the classical model cannot work very well for this data. So I'm not going to explain my algorithms here, but the result we obtained is we applied on ECG data and growth curve also. So I'm start with growth curve. So for the 93 kids, we measured their height in 31 time points. So when they born, 1 month later, 2 months later, and so on until 18 years old. So we can see in here the result of clustering. So we have the curve for growth of these kids, and we clustered them into class. And we see black one is one class and red one other cluster. And if we look at the center of this data, we can see there is black for boys and red for girls. The height of boys at certain age grow faster than girls. So we can find some interesting information from that. So, and we have ECG electrocardiogram of 200 patients, and we clustered them into cluster. And if we look at the center of this data, we can see these two curve here. And I think their black one is normal one, but I'm not expert in that. So we can apply clustering method or functional clustering method for this type of data. And here we see the comparison of our method. These 6 are our method, and this is another method. So we can see the box plot of our method is very tight. So it means our method works very well on these two data. So these were my research project, and I'm trying to a little bit explain about project. I'm actually working on that. I work with Dr. Fred Nicol from McCaig Institute on cervical spine project. The aim of this study is to establish normative value groups for the alignment of cervical spine and correlate this with alignment of other part of a spine. And this standard alignment pattern in cervical spine has not been conclusively defined. Previous study have attempted to establish this pattern, but the results are not inconsistent, and they are small. They have the small sample size, so we cannot base our work on that. And we need to define this normative pattern. So why we want to know that? Because the knowledge of normal alignment is essential in evaluation of pre-operative planning for deformity correction. So for this subject, we have 441 volunteer, which 55% were female, and this healthy volunteer, we want to find out what is different type of normal alignment of spine. So what we obtained, so we did a clustering, we applied clustering on the data we have, and we found out 3 cluster is the best number of cluster we can identify. As you know, we don't have label for this data, so we didn't know how many cluster we will find, and we use ELBO method for that. Finally, three cluster were identified with these number of person inside. So cluster 1 has more person. If we look at this graph, which shows the main coordinate point of each cluster, and the red point here are the centroid of each vertebra. So as we can see, the red and the violet part are most different in these 3 cluster. So C5 and C6 coordinate are differentiating these 3 cluster. So I don't want to go in the detail of our algorithms for that. Here is the result we obtained using convolutional neural network based on the result we obtained from clusters. I want to introduce you another project I'm working actually. This is about honor reader project to find out healthy from non-healthy image we have. So what is ANA? This is, I can't say more. In this project, I work with Dr. Choi from McKay Institute, but we can see in this graph, there are 30 anti-cellular antibody pattern, and the point is, I don't know these, oh my God, sorry. What are they exactly? I mean, the disease related to this autoimmune problem, but these orange level are competent levels. So the lab technician can identify easily these 2 orange levels. So there is 30 ANA, and they can do easily these two orange part, but the green level. Sorry, my slides move before me. So the one in green being more expert level. So the technician to be needs a very high level and experience of to identify this green part. So let me show you what seems ANA image we have. So this is for AC2, and these are different image we have, and what we want to do is use this image and create a model to detect automatically these 30 pattern. So for now, we worked on the first part is done is an algorithm to differentiate AC2 from AC4 and AC13. AC2 is related to anti-DFS 17, and it is mostly for healthy people. So if someone is healthy, this you can have this type of labeling. Sorry, but these are really related to a disease like lupus and other autoimmune disease. So our project was to detect ANA pattern automatically. So we want to differentiate between AC2, which can have for healthy patient versus mimicking pattern, which are AC4 and AC30. And we want to have a model in future for all of 30 pattern. So here you can see the result of 4 convolutional neural network. This is a deep learning method we applied on the image to detect if these image correspond to AC2 or AC4 or AC30. And these 3 model, actually 4 model, the last one is the combination of the other one. We obtained very high accuracy and precision and sensitivity, specificity F1 and AUC. So we are happy with this result, and we validated this result with external data, and we are happy with the results. So the point is this algorithm can interpret this image in a few seconds, while if it can take much more longer time to do this manually and need more experience. So we need expert lab technician to find and label these images. So the other point is about our model. They can find out very well a mixed pattern, because sometimes the images I show you, they have mixed pattern. So our model can identify mixed pattern and complex pattern also. So we want to extend this, as I told, to other AC, the 30 AC we have ANA images, and with external validation on 760 image, we have very high accuracy, precision, and sensitivity. And this is a good sign for us to continue on this project. And this project was funded by McKeag Institute. So, and a last subject, I want to a little bit elaborate, not go in detail, is gene expression data. So sometimes we need to differentiate the gene expression. For example, we have gene expression for some data. 2 groups can be more than 2 groups. For example, some of them are HIV infected and some of them not, as a control group, or some of them is spiked in gene and some of not. So we want to differentiate these, find which gene are different in these 2 group, or it can be several groups, as I told. And the challenge here is we have high dimensional data, with thousands of genes, which are our feature, but few sample. So we have a little observation, a small number, 4 or 3 observation, and we want to find out which genes are different in this 2 category. And the problem is, as we have a small number of observation, the normal distribution we are always, or most of time we use, is not valid here. So traditional statistical method cannot work. So just an example, imagine we have 10,000 genes and we want to test them in 5%. Actually, this can consider as classification problem also, the healthy or not healthy also. But we look at hypothesis testing side. So we have 6 samples from healthy and 3 from healthy and 3 from disease group. So if we look at number of false positive for 10,000 gene, so you can find out this value, the false positive, easily arrive at 500. So this is a lot, it's high. And the alpha, the significant level we use, yeah, sure, can be 1. So we want to alpha be small. So this is not a good thing. So imagine we want to test only 50. Now, instead of 50, we have to test 550 gene. So I'm not, so we do some permutation tests, and we define some, so just to see, yeah, I pass this because we don't have enough time to explain, but it is possible to do that, and it's very good. We obtained a very good result. So this is my last project about co-clustering. In co-clustering, this is a type of unsupervised learning. We simultaneously cluster row and columns together. Imagine we have this data here, and we want to cluster them. If we do clustering on rows, we obtain something like this. But if we do co-clustering, simultaneously row and columns, we obtain something like figure 3, and it can be easily summarized as cluster 4. So co-clustering can be a technique of summarizing if we have a lot of data and we don't want go use them as it is. We want to summarize them. We can use co-clustering. Another use of co-clustering is in image segmentation. So imagine this is our original data, and using co-clustering, we can obtain these image which identify correctly where is a snake and where is the insect. So why I'm talking about that? Because I think this technique can be used in segmentation on image you obtain from for your patient to identify where is the important information in the image and identify that automatically. And it can be used for finding what is drug side effect from text. So if you have text, a lot of text, we want to find out, for example, what is the side effect. So we can use this method. Here are my references, and thank you very much. I want to thank you, McCaig Institute, also, because they funded our project. Thank you. If you have any question, I can take it.
Thank
May I
you.
ask?
Go ahead.
May I ask?
Jen.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Amira, for it. I have some question regarding your, I think that algo method that you developed. I wanted to ask about the case of the linearity. You applied it on different data, but I was wondering if you mentioned that checking the linearity and normality usually is a challenge for that you explained before. So how about when you do we need to have linearity and normality for using this method? And when you used it, did you check those conditions?
Do you mean do we check that, or I didn't get?
No, two questions. First of all, do we need to check if we want to use that method? And have you checked it? And it was normal and linear, then you used it?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Yeah, we need to check this, but we normally in statistic and machine learning, we cannot check it prior, most of them.
Yes.
We compute the residuals and
Yeah.
then we test them if they are normal or not.
Yeah,
And
usually that's
if they are normal and linear, so we can use this assumption, but we need to check. We call it diagnostic checking on the
yeah.
residual. So we need, for sure, we need
Okay.
to, but after fitting the model, because we don't have noise, right, in the first.
Yes. Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
need to estimate them and then check them.
Okay. And another quick question regarding the combined convolutional neural network model that you use. May I ask how did you, what was your approach? How did you combine them together?
I don't remember the details.
Yeah.
But I think the result we obtained from 3 different neural convolutional. So imagine one of them tells this image have AC2 and 2 other tells this image has AC4. So we can use this as AC4. So this is one way of combining these methods.
You mean that the result that you get from each model, you then combine them as a kind of using another kind of neural network too?
Yeah, this is we call it most voting. So the label are most voted. We consider that one.
Oh, got it. Thank you very much, Doctor. Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Arnaz?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Eastwood, for holding this session, and thank you very much, Dr. Amin Ghaffari, for the great presentation and interesting projects and results. And may I ask a question about the classification project of breast cancer, prostate, and Parkinson? And what was the input of the problem? Did you receive images as the input?
No, for image, for classification, and for breast cancer, no, that there wasn't any image.
And how about prostate and Parkinson? So
The same.
none of them were images, no?
No, none of them, yeah.
Yeah, and not either for the regression of these diseases.
No, none of them was image. So the only part when we have image, it is very difficult to use machine learning, which are not deep. So for images, for example, for ANA reader project, we have the image, and we use that.
Yeah, because in this case, I was wondering, how did you do the feature extraction?
For this, which one?
For the one that you have the input image and you use machine learning algorithms.
For the ANA project?
Yeah.
We entered image for convolutional neural network. We don't need to identify the feature. I don't know why I hear reflex. So sorry. The good thing about neural network and deep learning and CNN is we don't need to extract the feature. We feed image as it is, raw image to deep learning, and it identifies correctly the.
I got it. So you only use neural networks. Thank you very much. And I have another question. And for the project of cervical spine alignment, and don't you think that the alignment also is dependent to different nations?
Can be. So these are the patients we hired here, not patient, healthy volunteer. So they are in here in Alberta. So maybe if we apply this for other nation, that will be different result.
Thank you very much.
You're
Thanks a lot.
welcome.
Doctor, I have another question. Regarding the algo that you use the lasso approach, does that you mentioned that one of the problems using when you wanted to compare it with the machine learning approaches, you said that having the not having enough data or needing more big data is a challenge. How about this model? How much is this model is sensitive uh, to the data size?
So for these methods works very well for high dimensional data. And when we say high dimensional data, it means we have more feature than observation. It works very well in this situation. So imagine we have only 100 patients, the data for 100 patients, but we measured a lot of information about them. This method actually worked very well, and I didn't have the data for this high dimensional data type, but in this simulation that works very well, and we
Okay.
have twice more feature or 3 times feature than our observation. It works very well.
And if so you said that it works best for that, but how about the case that we just have a small size out there? We don't have that big dimension. I mean,
So if we don't have big dimensional, it's okay. So the problem
okay.
is when we have a lot of feature,
Oh,
but
got
a
it.
small amount of observation. If we have a normal amount of data, it's okay, no
Yeah,
problem.
got it. Thank you very much, Doctor.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're almost out of time, but time for one more question if there's any further. Anybody else? Okay, well, that was a rich presentation and discussion. I so appreciate it, Mina. You covered multiple different kinds of data, from the ANA data to that were antibodies, ECG data, breast cancer data, the spinal data, as well as then putting your math and stats perspective on the machine learning approaches. So we appreciate it. And if anyone wants to contact Mina in the advertisement, her email was there. You might want to just put it in the chat before people leave there, Mina, so they could contact you. And she's open to collaborations, or if you want to consult her about any of the work you're doing on your projects. So thank you again for attending, everyone, and we'll see you next time.